Hello and welcome to the webinar. Today we're talking about confidence, and this time we're talking about rider confidence, and it's something that I hear so much. I just need a bit more confidence, and people sort of think that it's something that you can get, like you can just go to a trainer or a riding instructor and you can become more confident. And I think it's quite a different thing as well. I don't think that that is possible. I also think something that's really neglected is the horse confidence, and the two go hand in hand. You can't really have a confident rider without a confident horse, and you can't have a confident horse without a confident rider. So they're both very important. We should be addressing both of these things together, and I think that's exactly what we're doing inside the Can Do training. We're building confident horses and thus building confident riders. So what exactly is the confident horse? And a confident horse is one that understands the lessons that you've taught it, and that you can control its emotional level. So a horse that's not going up and down all the time with its emotional level, a horse that's quite steady with its emotional level. And the same thing really applies for a confident rider. So one of the big things that we need to think about is our emotional level, because it's all well and good to, fake it till you make it, but that doesn't work with horses. And there was an interesting experiment done quite a few years ago where they looked at that, and we think that if we fake it till we make it, that the horse won't realize that we're scared. But most often being scared is just common sense, protecting you. So I think it's a big mistake to ever ignore that. And this experiment was quite interesting, because what they did was they had a number of horses both being ridden and being led on the ground. And they asked them to ride patterns in a dressage arena. And they're riding these patterns. They were taking the horse and human heart rate, so just seeing how that varied while they were riding these patterns. And then after a little while, they said, okay, what we're going to do is there's going to be a fellow down in the middle of the arena on the side. And as you come through X, in the center of the arena, this chap's going to jump up and open an umbrella. And of course, that person didn't do that, but that was what the riders or leaders, handlers were told. So as they were coming down to X, they were anticipating this fellow was going to jump up and open the umbrella. That didn't happen. But what they did find was that all the riders and the horses' heart rates went up approaching X and at X. So why is this? And it's nice to think, oh, the horses are so in tune with us. When we get nervous, they get nervous. So that might be the case. It's very hard to show that that is the case. What could more likely be happening is that as we get nervous, we get tense. So as riders, we might grip a bit more with our legs, and as riders or handlers, we might hold on to the horse more tightly. Those sorts of increased pressure for no reason is likely to make the horse a little anxious. So this is what's happening. So what happens, when you say, oh, if you're not confident and you fake it till you make it, or just get on with it, I've been told that, I'll just get on with it, the horse is really quiet. Then you're likely to be tense, and that is likely to be reflected in the way you're riding or handling the horse. And the horse will then respond to that change in handling, so to that level of pressure that you probably don't even know you're applying. And it's another thing, when we are a bit nervous when we're riding, we tend to move forward like this. And so then what happens is our legs go back, so the legs are probably then contacting the horse. That's an added pressure. Plus we're blocking the horse's movement with our shoulder and moving ourselves forward, which makes us much less stable in the saddle and all of these sorts of things. So it does, it mounts up when you try to just sort of be confident, be more confident, give yourself a good old talking to and say, oh, just get on with it and do it. It doesn't work like that. You should listen to your common sense. I think it's very important. So what doesn't build confidence? And I think, there's a lot of things out there that you can try. Breathing exercises, that's one thing. Quite honestly, myself, if I don't feel confident about a horse, getting on the horse and then doing breathing exercises, I think would probably do my head in, but that is something that is suggested. Other things that are suggested, simple things like teaching your horse to stand still for mounting. So that's an interesting one, isn't it? Is if you have a horse that doesn't know anything, or you don't know what the horse knows, for example, actually getting on it to find out is a big mistake. So if it will stand still or not to be mounted, I think that's the wrong place to start. You don't want to start building your confidence in the saddle. It's too late. By the time you're astride the horse, it's too late. You need to make sure that you have what you need in place before you swing your leg over the horse. You really do. It's the most important thing. By the time you actually mount the horse, you're past the point of no return. Even if you're teaching the horse to stand still, to be mounted, you know, you can lean over the horse, you can always slide off if you've gone too far, too fast. So what it's really all about then is getting getting 7 things right. Okay, we're going to talk about 7 things today. The first one is the emotional level of the horse. So first of all, you need to be able to judge the emotional level. So you need to be able to say, okay, let's say we judge emotional level of a horse out of 100. So your average horse standing in the paddock is a 50 out of 100. You know, this is a horse that's not running around. The horses behind me here, they're probably a 55, 52. They're sort of alert. They're looking at the photographer. So, you know, a little bit more than they would be if they were just standing and there was nobody in the paddock. So you need to be aware of what your horse's emotional level is at any given time. And that is a matter of judging your horse. So how do you tell? How do you tell whether your horse is getting more emotional? And a big thing, an easy indicator, is head elevation. So if your horse lifts its head up, it increases its emotional level. If a horse pricks its ears, it increases its emotional level. So looking at these horses behind me here, this one here is probably the least emotional of the 4 that are facing us, because its ears are more relaxed, its head elevation is a little bit lower. And so the black and the chestnut over here are the most emotional. Their heads are a little bit higher, their ears are well pricked. The one behind me is a bit hard to tell. So you need to be able to judge your horse's emotional level at any given time. Now, all horses are slightly different. So, you know, you might have, let's say you've got 2 horses in the paddock. One's an Arab and the other's a Shetland pony. Now, your Shetland pony might have a naturally lower emotional level than your Arab. So in the paddock, your Shetland pony might be, you know, 45, and your Arab might be just, you know, generally more vigilant and looking around and sort of being very aware of its surroundings all the time. So it might be a natural 60. The thing to remember when you're trying to build your own confidence is that you can't just lower a horse's emotional level. So let's say you've got an emotional horse, be it just generally emotional horse or a horse that you've put in a situation that's made it more emotional. Let's say you're teaching the canter or something and the horse has become more emotional. Then it's important to remember that you can't just calm the horse down. I mean, it's almost impossible to do. So what you need to do is you need to teach the horse to increase its emotional level, and then you can offer the horse the opportunity to lower it again, to relax. It's really important that we start each lesson with relaxation. We can't force the horse to relax. So how do we do that? And the way we do it is we actually slightly increase the emotional level and then offer the horse the opportunity to relax. So if you take your horse that's generally a 50 and you bring the horse and you start to work with the horse, you want that to increase that emotional level to about 60, so about 10%, to get that horse engaged with learning. Once you push that up too far, so over 65, then the horse is going to be anxious. And so that's not a good place for the horse to be. So that you then need to allow the horse to relax. If you don't increase it above 50, your horse is also not going to be engaged. So we need to push the emotional level up. It's very tempting to try just to bring it down all the time. And, you know, found time and time and time again, it simply doesn't work. So what happens is you get these really, what seem like very quiet horses, and then you put them into a position where something happens that frightens them and they get really emotional, and you have no way of bringing it down. I have a lovely example in the UK. I met this really nice girl who brought her horse to me to be trained. She actually came to a series of clinics, and the first clinic was the round pen. And she said, oh, I had a really bad accident some years ago, and I bought this horse because he's really quiet, and I'm worried about the round pen because I don't think I'm going to get him to be able to move. And that's why I like him, because he's really quiet and he stands still all the time and he's really lazy and all this sort of stuff. And I said, oh, that's fine. You go last and we'll see how the other horses go, and then we'll see how you go. So we watched all these horses go through the, you know, teaching their owners, teaching them inside and outside turns, and they're increasing and lowering the emotional level, and it's all fine. So anyway, this girl put her horse in the round pen, and sure enough, you know, she was throwing the lariat at it and carrying on, and the horse just stood there, wouldn't move, until, because my property was right on a road, until somebody drove past in their horse and cart. And then the horse went from 16 hands to 18 hands, its tail in the air, ran around and around the round pen screaming, and she couldn't do anything with it, of course. So what happened was that was always inside the horse, but the owner had just got lucky, really, that hadn't come out when she'd been riding the horse or some other situation, because she was fine with the horse as long as everything was going along nicely and the situation was really controlled. Then as soon as something happened that frightened the horse, she had no way of lowering the emotional level. There had nothing she could do, because she hadn't taught the horse anything useful like this to lower its emotional level. So the situation was really dangerous, really fast. Now, had she actually, from the beginning, when she bought the horse, started to engage the horse with learning and actually started increasing the emotional level, she would then be in a position to be able to lower it again. And this is what makes you confident, being able to do something about the emotional level when things go wrong. So, as I say, it's imperative that we push the emotional level up a little bit in order to give the horse the opportunity to relax. So we can't force it to relax. We're going to offer it an opportunity, and I can only offer it an opportunity if I push it slightly higher than it already is. So a horse in that situation where it's already very emotional, let's say it went up to an 80, I'm going to push that horse up to maybe an 82 and then offer it the opportunity to relax. Now, how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to do that by engaging it with something. So this is why it's really important that we start early in our training with any new horse we come across or a young horse we have, that we start engaging the horse with learning, because what learning really, or training, is all about is manipulating that emotional level, being able to increase it and being able to decrease it. And so what happens when the horse learns, we engage the horse, the emotional level goes up a little bit, and then we offer the horse the opportunity to relax, and it comes down again. And each time we have to increase it less and less, and that keeps that horse in that engagement zone, in that nice, relaxed place where the horse is engaged with us and thinking about us, but not anxious or scared. So that's number two, really, is learning how to use that emotional level, use the horse's emotional level to your advantage. We also need to know how the horse learns. So, you know, a lot of the traditional methods of training horses are actually muscling the horse through things. And you can see that, you know, quite often when people talk about tying the horse to the tree of knowledge, that is muscling the horse through something, teaching it patience. It's assuming the horse is going to learn the lesson itself. The same thing applies for wet saddlecloth days. You know, that is muscling the horse through it. Same applies for chasing horses around in round pens. You're working them into submission. So all of these things, we've got to get rid of all of those things. We've got to really actually start looking at how the horse learns and then how we can apply training principles to make the most of that. So, the horse learns stimulus response. So we apply a stimulus, we apply a pressure, and the horse responds with the correct movement, and we release that. And the horse, that's negative reinforcement. The horse also learns with positive reinforcement. So the same thing, we apply a pressure or a cue, and the horse responds, and we reward that. And of course, training is a mixture of the two, always. We're always using positive and negative reinforcement together. So let's say, we're leading the horse and we want the horse to walk forward. So we'll apply a bit of pressure on the lead rope, or we'll cluck at the horse, both at pressure, making the noise is pressure. And when the horse walks forward, we release the pressure and we praise the horse. We give the horse a scratch or a pat, and that's positive reinforcement. So we use them both together. That's fine. We as humans learn in that way, and most animals learn in that way as well. It's a mixture of the two. So knowing that then is very important, because if we're trying to build our own confidence, not knowing how the horse learns. So if we think, for example, that we're not using negative reinforcement, we're still applying pressure to the horse. By riding the horse, by putting a head collar on the horse, we're using negative reinforcement. If we don't know we're doing that, the problem becomes that we don't know when we should release. By understanding what sort of reinforcement schedule you're using, you then can use it well. And that's the really important thing, because horses, habituate or desensitize to unrelenting pressure. And we assume that they've learned something, or that they're okay with that. But the problem is that it's very hard to tell whether a horse is okay with something. So take tight nosebands, for example. Tight nosebands make unrelenting pressure on the horse's nose. And it also really increases the amount of pain that the bit is causing, because the horse can't open its mouth, so it can't escape the pain. And people will tell you that their horse has habituated to a tight noseband, that their horse doesn't care about a tight noseband. Now, this has not been shown at all that this is the case. And I think we need to remember horses as prey animals. It's very important for a horse in the wild that it doesn't show that it's distressed. As a distressed or an injured animal is a much more likely target for a predator. So, horses are hardwired not to show distress. And that's something that's well worth remembering. When you think your horse is habituated to something that might be unpleasant, just ask yourself that. So, it's really important that we know how to apply the training principles, also how to break a lesson down. So for me, to simplify the training principles, I look at the spot on the horse I want to move, the direction I want that to go, the motivator for getting the horse to change the behavior, and the reward for doing that. So let's take a simple lesson such as hips to the fence for mounting. The spot on the horse I want to move is going to be the left hind. The direction I want it to go is going to be left. The motivator I use to get that spot to move is going to be the dressage whip, tapping lightly on the hindquarter. And the reward is going to be to stop tapping and praise the horse and add a scratch and a kind word. So one of the things about that, as long as we know what we're trying to teach, this is the importance of breaking the lesson down, because otherwise we're really vague. So if I don't know exactly what I'm looking for, in this case, left hind step left, I might not release in time. If I don't release in time, the horse is going to be confused about what I'm trying to do. So if I sometimes release when the left foot steps left and I don't always release when the left foot steps left, the horse is going to be confused. And a confused horse can become frustrated and everything goes out the window. Most of what we teach is simple enough to break down into these 4 categories. Well, actually, everything we teach is simple enough. To begin with, it might seem a bit complicated because we haven't yet built the foundation blocks. So let's take flying changes, for example. Now, we can have a spot on the horse we want to move. If we're changing, let's say we're cantering to the right and we want to do a flying change to the left. The spot on the horse we want to move is the left hind. The direction we want that to go is forward and underneath the horse. The motivator is probably going to be leg pressure from the right leg, and the reward will be to release that pressure. So that's simple enough, but we can't do that unless the prerequisites are there. So the horse needs to be soft in the bridle. The horse needs to understand, give to the bit, the very first lesson. Next, the horse needs to know shoulder control. We can't move the hindquarter independently unless we can stop the shoulder moving. So that's the second lesson. The horse needs to absolutely understand shoulder control and have shoulder control down to a pivot on the hindquarters with one rein. And the third thing is the horse needs to understand hindquarter control. So we need to be able to move the hindquarters independently of the shoulders, and the horse needs to understand lateral work, so whole horse moves sideways. And the horse needs to also have the pattern set up in its head, so that you teach the flying change pattern in walk, and then in trot, and then finally in canter. And so, those are quite a lot of things. So what happens when we go straight to flying changes without having taught those prerequisites, the horse gets confused and frustrated because, it's really difficult for the horse to do a flying change. And what you find is they just change in front because you throw the shoulders over and you're not even talking to the hindquarters. And that's confusing and frustrating and quite annoying for the horse because it's being subjected to all this pressure. It simply doesn't have the tools to respond correctly. So being able to break a lesson down, to being able to see what it is exactly we want to do, makes us confident and makes us successful, because it makes it so much easier for the horse. And so I think that's probably the biggest thing. And nothing that we teach the horse is that complicated. I mean, take Piaffe, for example. Piaffe, it's trot on the spot. Basically, all horses can trot. So all you do is shorten the stride, slow the horse down a bit, shorten the stride, but keep it in trot. And there's many ways of teaching it. I teach it where the horse stays in trot and we keep working that exercise and we just shorten the stride, but I don't take the horse back to walk. I don't stop the horse moving. I keep the horse forward all the time. And so it makes it quite an easy lesson for the horse. It's not a complicated lesson to teach at all. And the reason is that it's really clear in my mind what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is shorten the stride. And that's it. Whereas if you don't think about Piaffe like that, you might end up sort of tying the horse still at the front, so preventing movement at the front, and then tapping the hind legs or something. And what happens is the horse doesn't actually end up in trot. The horse actually ends up quite frustrated and quite confused, and you lose that 2-beat trot movement really quickly. The next thing is being able to judge when your horse is ready. Now, for riding confidence, this is a big one. And because we never actually want to get on a horse and just cross our fingers and hope for the best. Oh my gosh, I hope a tractor doesn't come along today. Or, oh my gosh, I hope the other people on the trail ride don't gallop off in front of me or canter up behind me or anything else. It really is crossing your fingers and hoping for the best. So the thing is, what we need to know is what the possible responses the horse might have. We're never going to know exactly how the horse is going to respond. And it's like anything in life, we'd never have all the answers. But if we've trained our own horse, then we are going to have a fairly good idea about the possible responses. And so this is why I like long reining so much, because once your horse is under saddle and is already being ridden, then it doesn't really matter to the horse much, I don't think, whether you're riding or whether you're on the ground. What the horse then is learning is all about frame and self-carriage and things like transitions. And so, you can put the horse on the long reins and you can see the horse and feel the horse, and you can judge whether or not, you can ride that. So you look at the horse. I like to have the horse walk, trot and canter, go through the transitions and make sure that the horse stays in frame and is relaxed and soft in the bridle and responsive. on the lines in walk, trot and canter and through the transitions, and I look at that and I say, can I ride that? And if the answer is yes, that's good. And that's question one. If the answer is yes. The second question is, do I want to ride that? And I think this is one we often ignore to our peril. And it's equally important. So if a horse is bucking, the answer to the first question for me is no, I can't ride a buck. I just fall off a horse that bucks. I'm not interested in trying or learning either. So no, I can't ride. So that horse is not ready. But if the horse, let's say the horse doesn't bark, but he seems a bit anxious, his head's a bit high, is rushing the transitions, then the second question hits you there. So do I want to ride that? And I never want to ride a horse that's anxious. I want to ride a horse that's confident. I want to ride a horse that understands the verbal cues so that I don't have to use leg when I first get on. I want a horse to understand that kiss cue means canter. I want a horse to understand trot, means come back to trot and halt. I need all those things before I get on the horse. So if the horse is sort of doing it okay, but looks a bit nervous, then the answer to the second question is no. And it's very important that you realize that. And don't let people talk you into saying, oh, this horse is fine. I mean, for example, I won't get on a horse that I haven't seen the owner ride. And even if I have seen the owner ride it, I won't get on it unless it knows give to the bit. I mean, unless that horse is in self-carriage, I will not get on it because I don't consider it safe. And so I'm not confident getting on it. I'm not interested in falling off horses anymore. I'm way too old for that. So there's some basic things that your horse should know before you get on. And I think that's really important. So the final thing is training your own horse. And that's the most important of all these things. So if you're looking for riding confidence, if you're looking to improve your riding confidence, just start training your own horse. The problem is I can't, like any other trainer, I can't make you confident. And any other trainer that you send your horse out to, what they're doing is they're creating a bubble of communication. And so what happens is the horse and the trainer get together and they're in this bubble and they're paying attention to each other and the trainer's controlling the horse's emotional level inside that bubble, and it's great. And then the trainer gives you back the horse and you've got no bubble because the bubble doesn't belong to the horse. The bubble belongs to the handler. So you have to build your own bubble. So realistically, you might as well start from the beginning because anything that a trainer has taught your horse, you're going to have to reteach the horse anyway and build your bubble at the same time. Because your cues are going to be slightly different from the trainer's cues. Remember in Colorado watching Josh Lyons actually teach a horse to do piaffe, and you know it was quite a long lesson, but the horse, it was an Azteca and it actually looked beautiful. At the end of it, it looked absolutely beautiful in this piaffe, and he gave it back to the owner and he said, oh, you have a go. And he'd ruined it in less than 5 minutes, probably about 3 minutes. The horse was rushing through him, going over him, lost the trot, everything. And the reason is not because the handler wasn't any good. It was because the bubble didn't belong to the handler. The bubble belonged to Josh and the horse together. They had the timing. Josh had the release. Josh had taught all of this to the horse. So he knew when to release. He knew when to praise the horse. He knew exactly how much pressure to pick up. And that's why it was their bubble. So when the horse was given back to the owner, he didn't know any of these things. It wasn't that he didn't know how to cue piaffe. He'd watched the lesson. He knew how to cue it. He knew what the cue was. But he didn't know how much pressure to use. He didn't know exactly where to stand. He didn't know when to release. He didn't know exactly how high the horse's emotional level should be to elicit that response. So he didn't have it. So, you know, I really think because of that, you're much better off just starting at the beginning, training your own horse and learning how the horse learns these things, how to break a lesson down. And therefore, when things do start to go wrong, you know exactly how to fix it. Let's say you're doing your flying changes and suddenly the horse just stops changing from left to right. You know, you can't pick that up, or the horse starts changing late behind. You know how the horse learned that. You know how to break that down. You know what's going wrong is your horse is not engaging its right hind. anymore. So you can work out how to fix that. It might be a physical problem with the horse. It might be the horse has had an injury that you don't know about. It might be the horse is just not sort of connecting the hind end well enough again. So you need to go back a little bit for that horse and reinforce some of that hindquarter control on the right side, and maybe redo some of your lateral work to reinforce that for the horse. You can do all of that if you're training your own horse, which is the big thing to building riding confidence. Anyway, thank you. That's it from me for today. Stick around if you have some questions. I'm going to turn off the recording and I will see you soon.